Deep within NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center at 3:47 a.m., Dr. Maya Chen stared at data that shouldn't exist. The James Webb Telescope's latest deep-field images revealed something that shattered every law of physics she'd spent 20 years studying. The universe wasn't expanding, it was contained, bounded, finite in ways that made her hands shake as she cross-referenced the measurements. Maya had hidden her past as a former NSA codebreaker from her colleagues, but those skills now screamed warnings in her mind. These weren't random cosmic boundaries, they were walls, constructed, deliberate. Someone or something had built a container around all of known existence, and humanity was living inside it like specimens in a terrarium. The Pentagon had already dispatched agents to confiscate the data. World governments would collapse when this leaked. Religious institutions would crumble. But Maya had discovered something else in the telescope's readings, coordinates pointing to what might be a way out. She had 72 hours before the cover-up began. 72 hours to decode humanity's true prison. But the real question haunting her wasn't how they'd been trapped. It was why their captors were finally letting them see the walls. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but Maya barely noticed. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up spectral analysis after spectral analysis. Each image confirmed what her rational mind refused to accept. The cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, didn't fade into infinity as every cosmological model predicted. Instead, it reflected back at precisely measured intervals, creating interference patterns that could only occur if it were bouncing off something solid. "Impossible," she whispered, zooming in on a section of space that should have shown galaxies billions of light-years away. Instead, the data revealed a smooth, metallic surface stretching beyond the telescope's resolution. The material composition readings made no sense, elements that didn't exist on the periodic table, arranged in crystalline structures that defied known chemistry. A secure terminal chimed with an encrypted message. Maya's blood froze as she recognized the sender, Colonel Marcus Webb, her former handler at the NSA. She hadn't heard from him in 8 years, not since she'd left the intelligence community to pursue pure science. "Eyes only, Dr. Chen. We know what you've found. Team is en route to Goddard. Maintain radio silence. Trust no one until we arrive. MW." Maya's hands trembled as she deleted the message. If Marcus was involved, this discovery had already triggered protocols buried deep within the national security apparatus. She had perhaps 6 hours before her lab became a classified facility and she became a permanent resident of some underground bunker. Frantically, she began copying the raw data to encrypted drives. 20 years of astrophysics training battled against decades of human evolution, both screaming that the universe couldn't possibly be a container. Yet the evidence was undeniable. Redshift measurements showed space itself curving back on itself at impossible angles. Galaxy clusters that should have been moving away from each other showed minute gravitational anomalies, as if they were all subtly attracted to the same invisible perimeter. But it was the coordinates that terrified her most. Buried in the telescope's positioning data, Maya had discovered a repeating pattern, a mathematical sequence that appeared in the background radiation itself. Her code-breaking instincts had kicked in automatically, recognizing the structure of an encoded message. After 3 hours of cryptanalysis, the numbers had resolved into spatial coordinates pointing to a specific region of space near the constellation Draco. What she found there defied explanation: a gap, a section of the cosmic boundary that showed different properties, thinner walls, different material composition, energy signatures that fluctuated in regular patterns like a door waiting to be opened. The lab's motion sensors suddenly activated, flooding the workspace with harsh fluorescent light. Maya spun around, expecting to see armed agents, but found only Dr. Richard Hoffman, her research partner, clutching a steaming cup of coffee and looking haggard. "Maya, what are you doing here so late?" His eyes moved to her screens, taking in the multiple data windows. "Are those the deep field results? I thought we weren't getting those until next week." She closed the coordinate analysis window reflexively. Couldn't sleep. Thought I'd run some preliminary calibrations. The lie came easily, a skill she'd hoped never to need again. Richard moved closer, squinting at the remaining displays. These spectral readings look odd. That can't be right. It's showing solid matter where there should be empty space. He reached for her keyboard. Let me run a diagnostic on the... Don't. Maya's voice carried an edge that made him step back. The system's been glitchy all night. I'm handling it. For a moment, Richard stared at her with confusion and something else, suspicion. Then he nodded slowly. Okay, but Maya, if you've found something significant, you know we need to report it through proper channels. After he left, Maya sat in the darkness, watching the parking lot through her window. 3 black SUVs were already pulling into the facility's restricted area. Her 72 hours had just become 72 minutes. The elevator descended through 40 floors of the Goddard Space Flight Center in what felt like seconds, Maya's ears popping as they plunged toward the classified levels. Director Harrison stood beside her, his face carved from granite, saying nothing as the security badge around his neck swayed with each mechanical jolt. When the doors finally opened, Maya found herself in a corridor she'd never seen before, stark white walls lined with biometric scanners and cameras that tracked their movement with predatory precision. The air tasted different down here, recycled and sterile, as if they'd crossed into another world entirely. How long has this level existed? Maya asked, her voice echoing off the walls. Since 1962, Harrison replied without breaking stride. Built the same year we started getting serious about what might be watching us from up there. He led her through a maze of corridors until they reached a door marked only with a number, 2847. Harrison pressed his palm to a scanner, leaned forward for a retinal scan, then waited as Maya did the same. She wondered when her biometrics had been programmed into this system and who had authorized it. The door opened to reveal a war room that belonged in a different century. 3 walls were covered floor to ceiling, with monitors displaying data streams, telescope feeds, and what appeared to be satellite imagery from around the globe. The 4th wall was glass, looking into an adjacent room where a dozen scientists hunched over workstations, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of their screens. "Welcome to Project Looking Glass," Harrison said, his voice carrying a weight that made Maya's stomach clench. "We've been preparing for this day for 60 years. A woman approached them, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confidence that came from holding secrets that could reshape the world. She extended her hand to Maya with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Dr. Chen, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Vance, Project Director. I've been following your work on cosmic inflation theory. Brilliant stuff, though I suspect you're about to discover it was more accurate than you intended." Maya shook her hand, feeling like she was being inducted into something she didn't understand. "What exactly is Project Looking Glass?" Vance gestured to the wall of monitors. "The systematic investigation of what we call boundary anomalies, inconsistencies in our observations of the universe that suggest we're not seeing the complete picture. Your discovery about the universe's size is just the latest in a pattern we've been tracking for decades." One of the monitors caught Maya's attention. It displayed a 3-dimensional model of the observable universe, but something was wrong with it. The galaxies at the edge seemed to curve back on themselves, creating impossible geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. "That's based on the latest Webb data," Vance explained, following Maya's gaze, "combined with observations from Hubble, Spitzer, and several classified telescopes you've never heard of. Notice anything unusual?" Maya stepped closer, her mind racing as she processed what she was seeing. The cosmic microwave background radiation, it's not uniform. There are patterns, like... She paused, her scientific training warring with the impossible conclusion forming in her mind. Like interference patterns, as if the radiation is reflecting off something. "Exactly." Harrison moved to stand beside her. "We've detected similar anomalies in gravitational wave data, gamma-ray bursts, and deep-field observations going back 30 years. Always at the edge of our detection capabilities, always just subtle enough to be dismissed as instrumental error. A technician across the room called out, "Dr. Vance, we're getting reports from the European Southern Observatory. They're confirming the size discrepancy with independent measurements." Vance nodded grimly. "How long before it goes public?" 12 hours, maybe less. The preprint servers are already buzzing with speculation. Maya felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. "You're saying this has been hidden from the scientific community for decades? The evidence that our universe might be contained somehow?" "Not hidden," Vance corrected. "Carefully managed. Do you have any idea what would happen if 8 billion people suddenly learned they were living inside something else? The psychological impact alone would be catastrophic. Religions would collapse overnight. Financial markets would implode. We'd have global panic within hours." Harrison activated a wall screen that displayed news feeds from around the world. Already Maya could see the early signs of unrest: social media posts about the Webb discovery, fringe websites claiming government cover-ups, conspiracy theorists connecting dots that were apparently more accurate than anyone had realized. "The cat's out of the bag now," Harrison said. "Thanks to your discovery, we estimate we have 72 hours before the implications become undeniable to the general public. 72 hours to figure out exactly what we're dealing with and how to manage the revelation." Maya stared at the monitors, her mind reeling. "And if we can't?" Vance's expression was grim. "Then we watch civilization tear itself apart as humanity confronts the possibility that everything we thought we knew about our place in the cosmos has been a comforting illusion." The room fell silent except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of ventilation systems. Maya realized she was no longer just an astrophysicist who had made an interesting discovery. She had become a potential witness to the end of the world as they knew it. The emergency meeting convened in the secure briefing room 3 floors below the Space Telescope Science Institute. Maya's hands trembled as she connected her laptop to the projection system, the weight of her discovery pressing down like a physical force. Director Harrison sat at the head of the polished table, flanked by Dr. Sarah Kim from the National Science Foundation and Colonel Marcus Reed from the Department of Defense. "Before we begin," Harrison said, his voice grave, "everyone in this room has signed additional NDAs. What we discuss here cannot leave these walls until we determine the appropriate response." Maya nodded, pulling up her analysis. The room's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the faces of the assembled officials. She'd barely slept since yesterday's revelation, her mind churning through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. "The data is unambiguous," she began, advancing to her first slide. "Webb's deep-field observations show the observable universe extends only 4.2 billion light-years in any direction, not the 46.5 billion we expected. But that's not the most disturbing part." She clicked to the next image, a 3-dimensional map of galactic distributions. "Look at the pattern. Galaxies don't just stop at our apparent boundary. They form a shell-like structure, as if they're distributed along the inner surface of something." Dr. Kim leaned forward, her brow furrowed. "You're suggesting we're inside some kind of container?" "I'm not suggesting it. The data proves it." Maya's voice grew steadier as she fell into the familiar rhythm of scientific presentation. Webb detected something else, a faint electromagnetic signature at the boundary. It's almost imperceptible, but it's there, a barrier of some kind. Colonel Reed's fingers drummed against the table. "Dr. Chen, what you're proposing is impossible. We've been observing space for decades. Hubble, Spitzer, ground-based telescopes. None with Webb's resolution and infrared sensitivity," Maya interrupted. "We've been looking at shadows on the cave wall, Colonel. Webb is the first instrument capable of seeing the cave itself." Harrison rubbed his temples. "Assuming you're correct, and I'm not saying you are, what exactly are we inside of?" Maya had dreaded this question. "I don't know. Something artificial. The electromagnetic signature suggests technology far beyond our understanding. The structure is maintaining itself somehow, possibly even expanding at a controlled rate to maintain the illusion of cosmic expansion. The room fell silent except for the ventilation system's quiet hiss. Dr. Kim was the first to speak. The implications. If word of this gets out, mass panic, Colonel Reed finished. Religious upheavals, economic collapse, social breakdown. We're talking about the fundamental underpinning of human understanding of reality. Maya advanced to her final slide, a timeline she'd constructed during her sleepless night. There's something else. I've been analyzing the boundary's electromagnetic signature more closely. It's not static. There are fluctuations, patterns that repeat every 18.7 hours, and those patterns are accelerating. What does that mean? Harrison asked. I think something is changing. The barrier, whatever it is, it's becoming more active, more aware. The word hung in the air like a curse. If my calculations are correct, we have maybe 72 hours before the fluctuations reach a critical threshold. Colonel Reed stood abruptly. Critical how? Maya's throat felt dry. I don't know, but in every model I've run, the accelerating patterns suggest some kind of phase transition is approaching. The barrier might become visible to the naked eye, or it might fail entirely. Or what, Dr. Chen? Or whatever put us here might decide to take us out. The briefing room's air seemed to thicken. Harrison's face had gone pale. You're talking about intelligent design, about something that built a prison around our entire observable universe. Not a prison, Maya said quietly. At least I hope not. Maybe a preserve, a zoo, a laboratory. Each word felt like acid on her tongue. But yes, something designed this. The mathematics are too elegant, too precise to be natural. Dr. Kim stood and began pacing. We need verification. Independent analysis of the Webb data by other teams. No. Colonel Reed's voice cut through the room like a blade. Not yet. If Dr. Chen is even partially correct, we cannot risk premature disclosure. We need a plan first. Harrison looked older than his 60 years. Maya, what do you need to confirm your findings, to understand what's happening? More telescope time, access to other space-based instruments, and, she hesitated, I want to send a signal, a directed transmission toward the boundary. If there's intelligence behind this, maybe we can communicate. Absolutely not, Reed snapped. You want to poke an unknown entity that's had us in a box for God knows how long? Colonel, with respect, we're already in the box. In 72 hours, something is going to change whether we act or not. I'd rather face whatever's coming with some understanding than blind panic. Harrison stood slowly. Dr. Chen, you have authorization for additional observations, but no transmissions without explicit approval. Dr. Kim, I need options for managed disclosure scenarios. Colonel Reed, worst-case contingency planning. He paused at the door. And people? Pray that Dr. Chen is wrong. But as Maya gathered her materials, she knew with cold certainty that she wasn't wrong. The universe was a lie, and the truth was about to reveal itself. Maya's hands trembled as she pulled up the raw data from Webb's deep field observations. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Around her, the observatory hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm, but the familiar sounds felt different now, like the heartbeat of something that had been masquerading as home. She'd been staring at the numbers for 3 hours, running calculation after calculation, hoping to find an error. The universe, according to every measurement Webb could take, was approximately 47 billion light-years in diameter, not the 93 billion they'd calculated from cosmic microwave background radiation, not even close. Impossible, she whispered, but the data didn't care about her disbelief. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Reeves' need to talk. Now, my office. Maya saved her work and made her way through the darkened corridors. The observatory at night felt like a cathedral of knowledge, but tonight it felt more like a mausoleum. She found Reeves hunched over his own terminal, his usually pristine appearance disheveled. Tell me you found a computational error, he said without looking up. I've run it 17 different ways. The measurements are consistent. Maya slumped into the chair across from his desk. James, what if we're looking at this wrong? What if the problem isn't with our measurements, but with our assumptions? Reeves finally met her eyes. What kind of assumptions? Maya pulled up her tablet, swiping through pages of calculations. We've always assumed we're measuring an infinite universe, or at least one that extends beyond our observable horizon. But what if there's actually an edge, a boundary? That's medieval thinking, Maya. We've known for decades. Have we? She leaned forward, her voice gaining intensity. We've known what we could observe from our position. But Webb is showing us something else. Look at the red shift data from the furthest galaxies. She pulled up a spectral analysis that made Reeves frown. The galaxies at what should have been the edge of observable space weren't behaving like distant objects racing away from them. Instead, their light showed patterns that suggested something else entirely. They're not receding, Reeves said slowly. They're reflecting? That's what it looks like, as if the light is bouncing off something and coming back to us. James, what if the cosmic microwave background isn't the afterglow of the Big Bang? What if it's an echo? The implications hung between them like a physical presence. Reeves stood abruptly and began pacing, his footsteps sharp against the tile floor. You're suggesting we're inside some kind of container, he said finally. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you what the data shows. Maya's voice was steady, but her pulse hammered in her throat. Every deep field observation, every measurement of cosmic expansion, it all points to the same conclusion. We're not in an infinite universe. We're in something finite, something with walls. Reeves stopped pacing. Show me the gravitational lensing data. Maya's fingers flew across her tablet. The gravitational lensing maps appeared, distortions in space-time that should have shown them the mass distribution of distant galaxy clusters. Instead, they showed something that made both scientists fall silent. The lensing formed patterns, not random distortions caused by massive objects, but geometric shapes that repeated across vast distances. Hexagonal structures that tessellated across the cosmic web like tiles in some impossible bathroom. That's not natural, Reeves breathed. No, it's not. Maya zoomed in on one of the hexagonal regions. These aren't galaxy clusters causing the lensing. These are structural elements, like we're seeing the framework of whatever we're inside. Reeves sank back into his chair. Maya, do you understand what you're saying? You're claiming that everything, our galaxy, our solar system, Earth itself, exists inside some kind of artificial construct. I'm not claiming anything. I'm reading the data Webb is giving us. She stood, her scientific training warring with the terror creeping up her spine. But yes, that's what it looks like. We need to contact the International Astronomical Union, the European Space Agency, NASA, and tell them what? That their entire cosmological model is wrong? That we might be living inside something built by... what? Who could build something that contains billions of galaxies? Reeves was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. How long before other teams start seeing this? Webb's data isn't exclusive to us. Maya checked her watch. The Harvard team gets their deep field time in 68 hours. The Chinese will probably notice the gravitational lensing anomalies within 72 hours if they haven't already. So we have 3 days before this becomes public knowledge. Less than that. Once word gets out, once people start asking questions. Maya thought about the hexagonal patterns, about light bouncing off invisible walls 47 billion light-years away. James, when people find out we're living inside something else, civilization won't survive the revelation. The observatory's ventilation systems cycled on, filling the silence with mechanical breathing. Somewhere above them, Webb continued its observations, dutifully recording the impossible truth about their cosmic prison. The encrypted files from JWST took 6 hours to fully decode. Maya sat hunched over her workstation as dawn crept through the laboratory windows, her eyes burning from staring at cascading data streams. Coffee cups formed a defensive perimeter around her keyboard, each one a marker of another sleepless hour wrestling with impossible numbers. The final decryption key unlocked everything. Maya's breath caught as the complete dataset materialized on her screen. The universe wasn't just smaller than predicted, it was geometrically constrained in ways that defied every model of cosmic expansion. The cosmic microwave background showed perfect symmetry, as if reflected off some kind of boundary. Galaxy clusters exhibited orbital patterns that suggested they were contained. Her hands trembled as she pulled up the spectroscopic analysis. Every distant star, every nebula, every quasar showed the same subtle redshift distortion. Light wasn't just traveling through expanding space, it was being bent, focused, filtered through some kind of medium that shouldn't exist. Impossible, she whispered, but the math didn't lie. The universe exhibited properties of an enclosed system, a vast, incomprehensibly large enclosed system. The laboratory door burst open. Dr. James Harrison stormed in, his usually pristine appearance disheveled, his face pale with exhaustion. Behind him came two people Maya didn't recognize, a woman in a sharp business suit and a man whose posture screamed military intelligence. "Dr. Chen," Harrison said, his voice strained. "We need to talk, now." Maya instinctively minimized her screen. "I'm in the middle of—" "The analysis can wait." The woman stepped forward, her heels clicking against the polished floor. "I'm Director Sarah Voss, National Security Administration. This is Colonel Martinez from the Pentagon's Advanced Research Division. We understand you've been examining classified telescope data." "Classified?" Maya's mind raced. "This is pure scientific research. The JWST feeds are public—" "Not anymore," Colonel Martinez interrupted. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "As of 0600 hours this morning, all deep space observation data has been reclassified under the National Defense Authorization Act. That includes your work here." Maya felt the walls closing in. She glanced at Harrison, searching for support, but found only resignation in his eyes. "James, what's going on?" "Tell her," Director Voss commanded. Harrison sank into a nearby chair, suddenly looking decades older. "Maya, you're not the only one who's been looking at this data. We've had teams at JPL, Harvard, Cambridge, every major observatory and research institution. They're all seeing the same thing you are." "Which is what, exactly?" Voss's question hung in the air like a blade. Maya hesitated, torn between scientific integrity and a growing sense of danger. "The observational data suggests anomalies in the cosmic structure, size discrepancies that don't match our current models." "Don't patronize us." Dr. Martinez pulled out a tablet, swiped across its surface. "We know you've calculated the exact dimensions. We know you've identified the boundary markers, and we know you understand what this means." The blood drained from Maya's face. If they had been monitoring her work, then they knew everything: the cosmic egg theory, the containment hypothesis, the terrifying possibility that humanity had never seen the real universe at all. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. Voss exchanged glances with Martinez. The first hints came 3 months ago from the Atacama Array. Radio telescopes picked up what initially appeared to be cosmic background noise, but pattern analysis revealed it was structured, artificial. Like hearing the hum of machinery through a wall. Maya's stomach dropped. "You've known for 3 months? And said nothing?" "We've been trying to verify the data," Harrison interjected, "to find some explanation that doesn't—" He trailed off, unable to voice the implications. "Doesn't what?" Maya demanded, though she already knew the answer. "Doesn't suggest we're living inside something else," Martinez finished bluntly. "Something vast and artificial that we've mistaken for the natural universe." The words hung heavy in the laboratory's sterile air. Maya felt reality tilting around her, the comfortable assumptions of a lifetime crumbling like sandcastles before a tide. "There's more," Voss continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. "The signal patterns we detected, they're accelerating. Whatever system we're inside, it's becoming more active, more aware. Maya's mind reeled with possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. "What do you want from me?" "Your expertise," Martinez replied. "Every calculation, every model, every theory you've developed. We need to understand what we're dealing with before—" The lights flickered. Emergency power kicked in with a low hum, bathing the laboratory in red-tinted illumination. Through the windows, Maya could see similar power fluctuations rippling across the city. "Before what?" she whispered. Voss checked her phone, her face growing ashen. "Before it responds to our observations. Dr. Chen, we believe that studying this phenomenon may have triggered something. You have 72 hours to help us understand what's happening. Or we may discover that our universe isn't just smaller than we thought, it's about to become much more dangerous." Maya's hands trembled as she stared at the simulation results on her laptop screen. The coffee shop around her buzzed with normal life. Students typing papers, business meetings, the hiss of the espresso machine. But she felt completely disconnected from it all, as if she were observing humanity through thick glass. The mathematical model she'd been running for the past 3 hours confirmed her worst fears. The universe wasn't just smaller than they'd calculated, it was orders of magnitude smaller. And the boundaries weren't expanding into empty space. They were pressing against something solid. Her phone buzzed. A text from her graduate student, Kevin, lab sealed off. "Security everywhere. They're saying equipment malfunction, but won't let anyone near the JWST data terminals." Maya closed her laptop and gathered her things. She needed to get back to the university, but carefully. If Chen was right about being watched, she couldn't afford to act suspiciously. The walk across campus felt surreal. Everything looked the same. The Gothic architecture of the physics building, students hurrying between classes, the grounds crew tending to the autumn landscaping. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that it was all somehow artificial, like a terrarium, like a cage decorated to look like freedom. She entered the physics building through a side entrance, avoiding the main lobby where she might encounter security or administrators. The hallway felt eerily quiet. Most of her colleagues were probably at lunch, unaware that their entire understanding of reality was about to collapse. Maya climbed to the 3rd floor and approached Dr. Elizabeth Reeves's office. Reeves was one of the few people she trusted completely, a theoretical physicist whose work on exotic matter and space-time geometry might provide crucial insights into what they were facing. She knocked softly and heard Reeves call out to enter. The older woman looked up from her desk, her silver hair pulled back in its characteristic bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. "Maya, you look terrible. What's wrong?" Maya closed the door behind her and activated the white noise generator Reeves kept for sensitive conversations. "Elizabeth, I need you to consider something that's going to sound insane." Over the next 20 minutes, Maya laid out everything: the JWST discovery, the impossible measurements, the patterns she detected in the cosmic background radiation that suggested they were inside some kind of enclosed system. Reeves listened without interruption, her expression growing more troubled with each revelation. "Show me the data," Reeves said finally. Maya connected her laptop to Reeves' larger monitor and pulled up the simulation. The visualization showed their observable universe as a roughly spherical region of space-time. But instead of expanding into infinity, it terminated at a boundary approximately 14.7 billion light-years from Earth in every direction. "Jesus Christ," Reeves whispered. "Maya, if this is accurate, I've checked it 17 different ways. The math doesn't lie." Reeves leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. "You know what this reminds me of? The Alcubierre drive concept, theoretical faster-than-light travel, using exotic matter to contract space in front of a vessel and expand it behind. What if something similar is happening here, but on a cosmic scale?" Maya felt her pulse quicken. "You mean we're inside some kind of vehicle or containment system?" "Think about it. If you wanted to create a stable pocket of space-time, isolated from the larger universe, you'd need exactly this kind of geometry. The cosmic microwave background radiation you detected could be thermal signatures from the containment mechanism itself. The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. Elizabeth, if we're right, then everything we know about cosmology, about the Big Bang, about our place in the universe, is wrong, or at least incomplete. Reeves stood and began pacing. The Big Bang wasn't the beginning of everything, it was the beginning of our local space-time bubble. Someone or something created this terrarium we're living in. Maya's phone rang. The caller ID showed Director Harrison's name. She let it go to voicemail, but it immediately rang again. "I have to take this," she told Reeves. Dr. Chen Harrison's voice was cold, controlled. "I need you in my office immediately. We have some things to discuss regarding your recent research activities. I'm in the middle of—" "Now, Maya, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, heart pounding. "They know," she said to Reeves. "They're going to shut me down." Reeves grabbed a flash drive from her desk drawer and plugged it into Maya's laptop, rapidly copying files. "Not if we move fast. I have contacts at CERN and the European Space Agency, people who won't be influenced by whatever pressure your administration is under. Elizabeth, if I disappear, you won't. But Maya, listen to me carefully. If we're right about this, if humanity really is living inside some kind of artificial construct, then someone has been managing this secret for a very long time. The question isn't just what we're inside of, it's who put us here and why they've decided it's time for us to find out." The elevator descended into what felt like the Earth's core, though Maya knew they were only going down 12 floors. The Hawthorne Institute's basement levels were classified beyond anything she'd imagined existed. Marcus stood beside her, his security badge granting them access to corridors that didn't appear on any building schematic. "The data you've been analyzing," Marcus said, as they walked past reinforced doors, marked only with numbers. "It's not the first time we've seen anomalies like this." Maya's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Project Looking Glass. Started in 1987, just after we launched the Cosmic Background Explorer. We've been tracking discrepancies in cosmic measurements for 36 years. The hallway stretched impossibly long, lined with doors that hummed with barely audible electronic activity. Maya felt like Alice tumbling down the rabbit hole, except this rabbit hole might contain the answer to why their universe was impossibly small. "You've known?" The betrayal hit her like physical pain. "You've known this whole time that something was wrong?" Marcus stopped at door 247B and pressed his palm to a scanner. "Not known, suspected, theorized. What you discovered with Webb, it's the first concrete proof." The door slid open, revealing a chamber that defied physics. The room stretched at least 100 feet in every direction, though the building above couldn't possibly accommodate such space. Banks of quantum computers lined the walls, their cooling systems creating a low industrial symphony, but it was the center of the room that made Maya's breath catch. A perfect sphere, 30 feet in diameter, hung suspended in a web of electromagnetic fields. Its surface rippled like liquid mercury, but patterns moved within it, patterns that looked disturbingly familiar. "What is that?" "Our best guess at a model," said a voice from the shadows. A woman emerged, tall and severe, wearing a lab coat over military fatigues. "Dr. Chen, I'm Colonel Sarah Webb." "Yes, that Webb. The telescope was my baby before I moved to more terrestrial concerns." Maya stared at the sphere, recognition dawning like a cold sunrise. "Those patterns, they match the cosmic web structure in my data." "Exactly." Colonel Webb approached the sphere, her reflection fragmenting across its surface. "We call it the mirror. It's been showing us the same structural anomalies you found, but from the inside." "Inside of what?" Maya's voice cracked. Marcus activated a holographic display that filled the air around them. The projection showed the familiar cosmic web, galaxies connected by vast filaments of dark matter, forming the largest structures in the known universe. But as Maya watched, the perspective began to shift. What if, Colonel Webb said, the cosmic web isn't the largest structure? What if it's just a component? The hologram zoomed out, and Maya felt reality tilt sideways. The cosmic web began to look like something else entirely, like neural pathways, like the branching structure of a vast nervous system. No, Maya whispered, that's impossible. Is it? Marcus pulled up her own data, the measurements that had started this nightmare. You found the universe is 847 times smaller than it should be. But what if it's not smaller? What if we're measuring from the wrong frame of reference? The implications crashed over Maya like a tsunami. If the cosmic web resembled neural pathways, if space itself was 847 times more compact than it should be, if matter and energy behaved like electrical impulses in a biological system, you're suggesting we're inside something alive. Colonel Webb nodded grimly. The mirror has been running models for 3 decades. Every simulation points to the same conclusion. The universe, our entire reality, exists within the cognitive structure of something vast beyond our comprehension. Maya sank into a nearby chair, her mind reeling. The dark energy expansion, the quantum foam, even the speed of light limitations, they're not fundamental forces, they're biological constraints, Marcus finished, the operational parameters of a living system. The sphere in the center of the room pulsed, its surface patterns shifting like slow lightning. Maya found herself drawn to it, standing and moving closer despite every instinct screaming at her to run. What happens when it wakes up? She asked. The question hung in the air like a death sentence. Colonel Webb and Marcus exchanged glances that confirmed Maya's worst fears. We don't know, Colonel Webb admitted, but the patterns have been accelerating. The frequency of anomalies like yours has increased exponentially in the past decade. Whatever this entity is, it's becoming more active. Maya pressed her hand against the nearest computer terminal, scrolling through decades of accumulated data. Radio telescope recordings, gravitational wave detections, quantum field fluctuations, all of it painted the same terrifying picture. Humanity had been living inside something vast and alien, something that was slowly stirring to consciousness. How long do we have? She asked. Marcus checked his watch. Based on the acceleration curve? Maybe 60 hours before the activity reaches critical levels. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of impossible knowledge settle on her shoulders. They weren't just facing the end of the world, they were facing the awakening of a god. The abandoned observatory perched on Mount Wilson like a forgotten sentinel, its dome cracked and weathered by decades of neglect. Maya's hands trembled as she guided the rental car up the winding mountain road, David gripping the dashboard beside her while Elena worked frantically on her laptop in the back seat. The interference pattern is getting stronger, Elena reported, her voice tight with concentration. Whatever's jamming our communications, it's definitely coming from up here. Maya killed the engine as they reached the observatory's parking area. The silence was absolute. No wind, no birds, nothing but the distant hum of electronics that seemed to emanate from the building itself. The wrongness of it made her skin crawl. This place has been shut down for 15 years, David whispered, studying the structure. So why are there fresh tire tracks? Maya followed his gaze to the gravel, where multiple sets of tire treads formed a complex pattern around the building's entrance. Some were recent enough that loose pebbles still scattered in the impressions. Because someone's been using it, she said, pieces clicking together in her mind, the perfect cover, an abandoned facility that no one would think to investigate. They approached the entrance cautiously. The heavy metal door stood slightly ajar, and a faint blue glow emanated from within. Maya's pulse quickened as she recognized the color. It matched the anomalous readings from the Webb telescope data. Inside, the observatory had been transformed into something that belonged in a science fiction film. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens displaying incomprehensible data streams. In the center of the room, where the old telescope mount once stood, a massive cylindrical device hummed with energy. Its surface was covered in symbols that hurt to look at directly. "My God!" Elena breathed, her equipment beeping frantically. "The electromagnetic signature is off the charts. This thing is broadcasting something into space." "Not into space," Maya corrected, her scientific mind racing as she studied the device's configuration. "It's broadcasting inward. Look at the focal alignment." Before anyone could respond, footsteps echoed from the stairwell. Dr. Harrison Voss emerged from the shadows, but this wasn't the confident administrator they'd confronted at the university. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and something that might have been fear. "Dr. Chen," he said, his voice carrying none of its usual authority, "I was wondering when you'd find your way here." "What is this place, Harrison?" Maya demanded, gesturing at the alien technology surrounding them. "What have you been hiding?" Voss laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Hiding? I've been trying to save our species from a truth that would shatter every human mind on this planet." He moved toward the central device, his hand hovering over a control panel. "You think you want answers, Maya, but some knowledge is too dangerous to possess." "The universe isn't what we thought it was," Maya said, stepping closer. "We're inside something, aren't we? That's what the Webb data really showed." "Inside is such a limited concept," Voss replied. "We're specimens, exhibits in a collection so vast and complex that our entire observable universe is merely one small display case." His hand moved to a red switch. "This device has been maintaining the illusion for decades, creating the false readings that convinced us space was infinite. But the system is failing." Elena's scanner erupted in a cascade of alarms. "Maya, whatever he's planning to do, the energy buildup is enormous. This could..." "Could what?" Voss interrupted. "Destroy our cage? Yes, it could. But would that be worse than living as unknowing prisoners?" His finger hovered over the switch. "Your discovery has forced my hand. In 47 hours, the illusion will collapse completely. Humanity will see the barriers of our enclosure, understand that every star in our sky is artificial, that our sun is merely a heat lamp in someone else's laboratory." "You can't make that choice for everyone," David said, moving to flank Voss from the other side. "People have a right to know the truth." "Do they?" Voss asked. "When that truth is that we're nothing more than bacteria in a petri dish, that everything we've achieved, every dream of exploring the cosmos, is meaningless because we can never leave this container?" Maya's mind raced through possibilities, scientific training warring with human instinct. The device before them represented decades of work, possibly contact with their captors. Destroying it might free humanity from the illusion, but at what cost? "There's another option," she said suddenly. "We don't have to choose between ignorance and despair. We can find a way to communicate with them, to prove we're more than just specimens." Voss's hand froze above the switch. "You think I haven't tried? This device isn't just creating illusions, Maya. It's been screaming into the void for 30 years, trying to get their attention. And do you know what response we've received? The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Nothing," he whispered. "Absolute nothing." The abandoned observatory sat like a concrete cathedral against the Wyoming sky, its skeletal dome split open to reveal rusted metal bones. Maya's stolen rental car coughed to a stop beside overgrown weeds that had once been a parking lot. According to her GPS, they were 30 miles from the nearest town, exactly where Dr. Elizabeth Reeves had specified in her cryptic message. "This is insane," David muttered, checking his phone for the 15th time. "No signal. We're following breadcrumbs left by a dead woman to meet someone who might not even exist." Maya stepped out into the wind, her jacket whipping around her. The coordinates Reeves had embedded in the telescope data had led them here to the Clearwater Radio Observatory, shuttered 15 years ago when funding dried up. But someone had been maintaining it. Fresh tire tracks cut through the dirt, and she could see light bleeding from cracks around the dome's base. "Dr. Chen," the voice came from behind them. They spun to find a woman emerging from the shadows of an equipment shed, maybe 60 years old, silver hair pulled back severely, eyes that seemed to catalogue everything at once. "I'm Sarah Voss. Elizabeth spoke of you often." Maya's hand instinctively moved toward the pepper spray in her pocket. "You worked with Dr. Reeves?" "For 23 years. We discovered the truth together." Voss gestured toward the observatory. "She died protecting it. Now that responsibility falls to you." They followed her through a door hidden behind hanging cables and rust. Inside, Maya gasped. The supposedly abandoned facility hummed with activity. Banks of computers lined the walls, their screens displaying data streams she recognized from the James Webb telescope. Modified radio telescopes pointed in configurations that defied standard astronomical practice, and everywhere, equations covered whiteboards in handwriting she knew belonged to Reeves. "Elizabeth called it the shell," Voss said, leading them deeper into the complex. "She theorized that what we perceive as the observable universe is actually the inner surface of a vast spherical structure. Imagine being inside a ping-pong ball, trying to map its interior surface while believing you're looking out into infinite space." David shook his head. "That's impossible. The cosmic microwave background, stellar parallax, redshift measurements, all consistent with her model." Voss pulled up a three-dimensional hologram that made Maya's breath catch. It showed the known universe, but inverted, curved back on itself like the inner surface of a soap bubble. What we interpret as distant galaxies receding from us are actually reflections, refractions, projections on the shell's inner surface. Maya stared at the display, her mind racing through the implications, the Webb telescope's measurements. If space is finite, bounded by this shell, then our distance calculations would be completely wrong. Exactly. We're not looking across billions of light years. We're looking at patterns maybe a few 100 million light years away, curved and distorted by the shell's geometry. Voss manipulated the hologram, showing how light could bend and reflect within the confined space. Elizabeth spent decades developing the mathematics. It explains dark matter, dark energy, the universe's apparent acceleration, all artifacts of our misunderstanding about where we actually are. "But what is the shell?" Maya asked. "What are we inside of?" Voss's expression darkened. That's where Elizabeth's research became dangerous. She believed the shell was artificial, constructed, that humanity and everything we know exists within something built by an intelligence so vast we can't comprehend its nature. The room fell silent except for the hum of computers. Maya felt the weight of revelation settling over her like a lead blanket. "You're saying we're in some kind of container?" "A terrarium, a zoo exhibit, a petri dish." Elizabeth wasn't sure of the purpose, only that our entire reality exists at the pleasure of something unimaginably alien. Voss pulled up another display showing energy patterns at the theoretical shell boundary. But 3 weeks ago, these readings started appearing. The shell is showing signs of instability. Maya studied the data, her physicist's training warring with the impossibility of what she was seeing. The energy signatures were unlike anything in known physics, yet they followed mathematical patterns that made terrible sense. "The timeline I calculated," she whispered. 68 hours until some kind of cascade failure. You're saying that's the shell itself?" Elizabeth believed that our expanding awareness, our increasingly powerful telescopes and detection methods, might be triggering some kind of automatic response, like bacteria in a petri dish growing too complex for the experiment's parameters. David grabbed Maya's arm. "This is insane. You're talking about throwing away everything we know about physics, about reality itself, based on the theories of a dead woman and energy readings that could be instrumental error." But Maya was thinking about the Webb telescope data, about the impossible measurements that had started this nightmare, about patterns in the cosmic microwave background that suddenly made sense if viewed as reflections rather than direct observations. "Show me Elizabeth's final calculations," she said quietly. Voss led them to a secured terminal. She died before completing them, But she believed the shell's creators left markers, signs we could decode if we knew how to look. Signs of what? Instructions. For what happens next? The abandoned subway tunnel stretched into darkness, its tiled walls slick with decades of moisture and neglect. Maya's footsteps echoed against the curved ceiling as she followed Elena deeper into the underground labyrinth beneath Geneva. The physicist's flashlight beam danced across rusted rails and scattered debris, creating shifting shadows that made her skin crawl. "How much further?" Maya whispered. Though she wasn't sure why she felt the need to keep her voice down, the tunnel felt alive somehow, as if it were listening. "Almost there," Elena replied, her own voice tight with nervous energy. "The facility entrance should be just ahead, past that maintenance junction." They'd been walking for 20 minutes, since entering through the concealed door Elena had shown her in a forgotten corner of CERN's older buildings. The passage had led them through a maze of service corridors before connecting to this abandoned section of Geneva's metro system. Maya's mind raced with questions about how long this route had existed and who else knew about it. As they approached the junction Elena had mentioned, Maya noticed the tunnel walls were different here. The old ceramic tiles gave way to smoother concrete, and the air carried a faint metallic taste that reminded her of the particle accelerator halls. Her skin began to tingle with the same sensation she'd experienced near the resonance chamber. "Elena, what exactly are we walking into?" Maya grabbed the other woman's arm, forcing her to stop. "You said your colleagues found something, but you've been vague about details." Elena's face was pale in the flashlight glow, her eyes reflecting a mixture of excitement and fear. "Because I'm not entirely sure I believe it myself. 3 months ago, we detected an anomaly in the quantum field measurements around the Large Hadron Collider. At first, we thought it was equipment malfunction, but the readings were consistent across multiple detection systems." "What kind of anomaly?" "Interference patterns that shouldn't exist. Quantum fluctuations that seem to respond to our observation in ways that violated everything we know about particle physics." Elena's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Maya, it was as if something was observing us back." A chill ran down Maya's spine that had nothing to do with the tunnel's temperature. She thought about the impossible readings from the Webb telescope, the mathematical proofs that had driven her from her lab, the growing certainty that their reality was far smaller and stranger than anyone imagined. They reached a heavy steel door marked with radiation warnings and biohazard symbols. Elena produced a keycard from her jacket and swiped it through a reader that seemed far too modern for this forgotten corner of underground Geneva. The door hissed open, revealing a pristine corridor lined with LED strips that activated as they entered. "Welcome to the Deep Resonance Laboratory," Elena said. "Officially, we don't exist. Our funding comes through channels so buried in the CERN budget that most of the organization's leadership doesn't know we're here." The corridor led to a series of connected chambers carved directly from the bedrock. Through observation windows, Maya glimpsed equipment she didn't recognize, arrays of crystalline structures suspended in electromagnetic fields, computer displays showing three-dimensional models of impossible geometries, and in one room what appeared to be a perfect sphere of darkness, hovering in the center of a containment field. "Jesus Christ," Maya breathed. "How long have you been working down here?" "The facility has existed in various forms for 15 years, but our current research began after the quantum anomalies started." Elena led her to a control room where Dr. Hassan stood before a wall of monitors, his face illuminated by scrolling data streams. "James, she's here." Hassan turned, and Maya saw the same haunted expression she'd noticed in Elena. "Dr. Chen, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." He gestured to the displays around them. "What you're about to see may be disturbing, but Elena says you've already begun to suspect the truth about our situation." "Show me," Maya said, though part of her wanted to turn and run back through the tunnels to the surface. Hassan pressed a series of commands into his console, and the central monitor displayed what looked like a three-dimensional map of space around Earth. But as Maya studied it more closely, she realized the scale was wrong. The stars were too close, the galactic structure too compressed. This is real-time data from our quantum field sensors, Hassan explained. We've been mapping the actual boundaries of local space-time, and what we've found contradicts every astronomical observation ever made. The display zoomed out, showing Earth's solar system as a tiny bubble surrounded by nothing. Not empty space, but an absence that Maya's brain refused to process. The stars, galaxies, and cosmic structures the telescopes showed them were there, but compressed into a layer so thin it was essentially two-dimensional. "We're inside something," Elena said quietly. "Something vast and alien, and we've been looking at projections on its walls, thinking we were seeing the real universe." Maya's legs gave out, and she sank into a nearby chair as the implications crashed over her. The Webb telescope's impossible readings, the mathematical inconsistencies that had plagued cosmology for decades, the growing sense that reality itself was somehow artificial, it all made terrible sense. "How long do we have?" she asked. Hassan's expression darkened. "Before what?" "Before whatever's keeping us here decides we've seen too much." The quantum computer's processing cores hummed with an intensity that made Maya's teeth ache. Strings of data cascaded across dozens of monitors, each calculation bringing them closer to a truth that felt increasingly impossible to accept. She'd been awake for 37 hours straight, surviving on coffee and the electric urgency of discovery. "The pattern is holding," Marcus announced, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Every measurement confirms it. We're not just in a simulation. We're in something with defined boundaries, physical walls that our universe is bumping up against." Maya rubbed her burning eyes. The implications were staggering. If Marcus was right, then everything they understood about physics, about reality itself, was fundamentally wrong. The cosmic microwave background radiation they'd been studying wasn't the afterglow of the Big Bang. It was interference patterns from whatever contained them. "Show me the edge calculations again," she said. Marcus pulled up a three-dimensional model that rotated slowly in the holographic display. What had once looked like the familiar web-like structure of galactic clusters now revealed itself as something else entirely, a vast spherical chamber with humanity's observable universe floating somewhere near the center. "The radio telescopes are picking up periodic pulses," Dr. Patel's voice crackled through the encrypted communication link from Arecibo. "They're too regular to be natural. Every 14 hours and 17 minutes we get the same signal pattern from beyond the cosmic horizon." "Maintenance cycles," Marcus whispered. "Jesus Christ, we're looking at maintenance cycles." Maya's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee cup. The liquid had long gone cold, but she needed something to ground her in the moment. Outside the facility, she could hear helicopters circling. The world was demanding answers she wasn't sure humanity was ready to receive. "Dr. Chen?" The voice belonged to Sarah Kim from the communications team. "We're getting reports from observatories worldwide. The James Webb telescope has detected what appears to be a geometric structure in the cosmic web. It's artificial." The room fell silent except for the quantum computer's persistent humming. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 6 billion people's reality pressing down on her shoulders. In 35 hours, Director Harrison would be forced to release their preliminary findings to prevent global chaos. But how do you tell an entire species that their existence might be nothing more than an experiment? "Bring up the Webb data," she ordered. The holographic display shifted, revealing an image that would haunt Maya's dreams for the rest of her life. Vast geometric structures stretched across what they'd previously thought was empty space, perfect hexagonal patterns that extended beyond the observable horizon. They looked like the walls of a honeycomb, each cell large enough to contain billions of galaxies. "We're in a zoo," Marcus said quietly, "or a laboratory. Maybe there's no difference." Maya's secure phone buzzed with an incoming message from Director Harrison. "Congress is asking questions. How much longer do you need?" She typed back, "Not long enough." The truth was, they'd already found what they were looking for. The universe wasn't infinite and expanding into nothingness. It was finite, contained, and apparently under observation by intelligences so advanced that humanity might as well be bacteria in a petri dish. "Dr. Chen," Sarah called out again, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the International Space Station. Commander Rodriguez says they can see something with the naked eye. Structural elements that weren't there yesterday." Maya felt her blood turn to ice. If whatever contained them was becoming visible, it meant something fundamental had changed. Either their cosmic container was malfunctioning, or something had decided it was time for humanity to know the truth. "Put Rodriguez through," she ordered. The astronaut's voice filled the room, tight with barely controlled fear. "Control, I've been watching this for the past 6 hours. There are lines in space, geometric patterns stretching from horizon to horizon. They're becoming more distinct every hour, like someone is slowly turning up the contrast on a hidden image." Maya exchanged glances with Marcus. Whatever had kept humanity blind to their true situation was failing, breaking down, or being deliberately removed. "Commander, can you estimate how long before these structures become visible from Earth? At the current rate of materialization, maybe 12 hours, maybe less. 12 hours before 6 billion people looked up at the night sky and saw the walls of their cosmic prison." Maya thought about Harrison's press conference, about the careful plans they'd made to ease humanity into this revelation gradually. All of that was about to become irrelevant. She walked to the facility's reinforced window and stared out at the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the blue atmosphere and the familiar dance of planets, lay evidence that humanity's entire understanding of existence was about to be rewritten. Her reflection stared back from the glass, and for a moment Maya wondered if she was looking at the face of the last person to live in the old reality. Maya's fingers trembled as she adjusted the quantum resonance detector for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. The underground laboratory hummed with an otherworldly energy that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her racing heartbeat. 67 hours had passed since her discovery, and the world above was beginning to crack under the weight of leaked fragments of truth. "The harmonic frequency is stabilizing," David called out from across the lab, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "Whatever's out there, it's responding to our signals." Through the reinforced windows, Maya could see the chaos unfolding in the streets of Geneva. Military vehicles patrolled between abandoned cars, their occupants having fled after fragmentary reports of the containment revelation had spread across social media. The official denials from world governments only fueled more speculation and panic. Elena's voice cut through her concentration. "The Chinese team in Beijing just transmitted their results. The quantum tunneling experiments confirm it. We're not just inside something, we're inside something that's actively maintaining our reality." The implications crashed over Maya like a cold wave. She moved to Elena's workstation, studying the data streaming across multiple monitors. The Beijing team had attempted to breach the boundary using quantum entanglement, and what they'd discovered defied every law of physics she'd spent her career studying. "Look at these energy signatures," Elena continued, highlighting sections of the data. "Whatever contains us isn't just a physical barrier. It's a dynamic system that repairs itself, adapts, and—" she paused, her face pale. "It learns." Maya's phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Dr. Harrison. The Joint Chiefs were demanding answers. The President was locked in emergency sessions with world leaders. Stock markets had crashed. Religious leaders were either declaring the end times or claiming divine revelation, and through it all, the entity containing them remained utterly silent. "There," David shouted suddenly. "Sector 7, Quantum Channel 14. We're getting a response pattern." Maya rushed to the main console as waves of impossible data flooded their systems. The quantum resonance detector was picking up something that shouldn't exist. Structured information embedded in the fabric of space-time itself. As the patterns resolved, Maya realized she was looking at what could only be described as a message. "It's not random," she whispered, her scientific training warring with the impossibility before her eyes. "These patterns, They're mathematical sequences. Fibonacci numbers, prime sequences, but arranged in ways that suggest consciousness, Elena finished. Maya, we're looking at proof of consciousness operating at a cosmic scale. The laboratory's emergency communication system crackled to life. Dr. Chen, this is Director Morrison from CERN. We need immediate consultation. Our particle accelerator experiments have triggered something. The boundary is... It's changing. Maya grabbed the radio. What kind of changes? Localized space-time distortions, reality fluctuations, and Dr. Chen, we're detecting similar quantum signatures at facilities worldwide. Fermilab, Keck in Japan, DZI in Germany. Every time we probe the boundaries, it responds. The pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. Humanity's recent advances in quantum physics, their deep space observations, their particle experiments, they hadn't just discovered they were contained. They'd announced their presence to whatever was containing them. Cut all experiments immediately, Maya commanded into the radio. Worldwide shutdown of all quantum research until we understand what we're dealing with. I'm afraid that's no longer possible, Morrison replied grimly. Governments are demanding answers. Military applications are being explored. The genie is out of the bottle, Dr. Chen. Elena's screen suddenly blazed with new data. Maya, the quantum field fluctuations are accelerating. Whatever's out there, it's not just aware of us now, it's studying us. Through the laboratory's network, reports flooded in from around the globe. Observatories detected impossible stellar movements. Physics experiments yielded results that violated conservation of energy. In 3 locations, researchers reported direct visual contact with structures that existed outside normal space-time. Maya stared at the central display, watching as humanity's reality bent and shifted under the attention of something incomprehensibly vast. The universe wasn't just smaller than they'd calculated, it was provisional, maintained by an intelligence that operated beyond their understanding of existence itself. How long do we have? David asked quietly. Maya studied the exponential curve of reality fluctuations, calculating the rate at which their contained universe was destabilizing under observation. At current acceleration, 18 hours before the containment field becomes critically unstable. And then? Maya looked at her colleagues, these brilliant minds who'd helped her uncover humanity's greatest discovery and potentially its final revelation. Outside, sirens wailed as civilization teetered on the edge of collapse. Above them, an intelligence vast as galaxies had turned its attention to the small, curious species that had finally learned to see the walls of its cage. Then we find out what happens when we're no longer useful to whatever put us here, she said, returning to her calculations with desperate intensity. The countdown had become something far more ominous than she'd initially realized. The screens around Maya flickered with cascading data as the quantum processors strained against calculations that shouldn't exist. 67 hours had passed since her discovery, and sleep felt like a luxury she could no longer afford. The coffee had stopped working 12 hours ago, replaced by pure adrenaline and the terrifying clarity that came with staring into an impossible truth. The electromagnetic signatures are consistent across all measurement points, Hassan announced from his workstation, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. Whatever this barrier is, it's not just containing space, it's actively managing it. Maya's fingers traced patterns across her tablet, manipulating the 3-dimensional model they'd constructed. The universe appeared as a perfect sphere, its boundaries marked by the strange energy readings that had first caught her attention. But now, with more data, she could see the subtle variations in the barrier's composition, areas where the electromagnetic field pulsed differently, creating what looked almost like synaptic patterns, she whispered. Colonel Morrison looked up from his secure communication device. Come again, Dr. Chen. The energy fluctuations in the barrier, they're not random. Maya expanded the visualization, highlighting the rhythmic pulses of energy that coursed along the universe's edge. Look at the frequency patterns, the way they cascade from one region to another. Dr. Reeves moved closer to the display, his analytical mind immediately grasping the implications. Neural activity. You're suggesting we're inside something's brain. The words hung in the air like a physical weight. Maya had been thinking it for hours but hadn't dared voice the hypothesis. Now, seeing the data mapped out in front of them, the comparison was undeniable. The response times match, she continued, pulling up additional readings. When we directed focused electromagnetic pulses at different sections of the barrier, we got responses, not echoes, responses. The patterns change based on the type of signal we send. Hassan's hands flew across his keyboard, running correlation analyses. If this is neural tissue, then we're looking at an intelligence operating on a scale we can't comprehend. The processing power required to maintain a construct this size would exceed anything we can imagine, Maya finished. But there's more. She manipulated the display again, showing the historical data they'd gathered from every space telescope and satellite over the past 20 years. The energy signatures had been there all along, hidden in background radiation that scientists had dismissed as cosmic noise. The activity has been increasing, she said, steadily over the past 2 decades. Whatever this intelligence is, it's becoming more active. Morrison's expression had shifted from skepticism to grim acceptance. What kind of activity are we talking about? What does a universe-sized brain think about? Before Maya could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed the chamber in pulsing red as Dr. Martinez's voice echoed over the intercom system. All personnel to stations. We have multiple gravitational anomalies detected across the solar system. Repeat, gravitational anomalies throughout the solar system. Maya's blood turned to ice. She'd been so focused on understanding the barrier that she hadn't considered what their probing might trigger. Her fingers raced across the controls, accessing real-time data from gravitational wave detectors around the globe. The readings were unlike anything in the scientific literature. Massive distortions in space-time were appearing and disappearing in seemingly random locations, near Jupiter's moons, in the asteroid belt, close to Mars. Each distortion lasted only seconds, but the energy involved was staggering. We woke something up, Hassan breathed, staring at his own displays. Dr. Reeves was already calculating trajectories. These aren't random. There's a pattern to the locations, a progression moving inward through the solar system. Maya felt the pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. The intelligence wasn't just aware of their presence, it was responding to their investigation. Each electromagnetic pulse they'd sent to probe the barrier had been registered, analyzed, and now the entity was probing back. It's mapping us, she said, learning about the structures inside its own consciousness. Another wave of gravitational distortions appeared, this time closer to Earth's orbit. The space station reported feeling the effects directly, a brief but noticeable alteration in their trajectory that required immediate correction. Morrison was barking orders into his communication device, coordinating with NOAA and NASA to track the anomalies. But Maya could see the futility in his actions. How do you defend against an intelligence that encompasses your entire reality? We need to stop all active scans immediately, she announced. No more electromagnetic probes, no more attempts to penetrate the barrier. We're dealing with something that makes us look like bacteria. But our research, Hassan protested. Our research may have doomed us all, Maya interrupted. Look at the progression. It's learning about us faster than we're learning about it. And once it understands what we are... She left the sentence unfinished, but everyone in the room understood. They were foreign objects in a vast mind, and that mind was beginning to take notice. The emergency broadcast pierced through the chaos outside Maya's apartment like a digital scream. She froze, her hands still gripping the printouts scattered across her kitchen table as the automated voice echoed from every screen in the building. This is not a test. All citizens are advised to remain indoors. Military personnel are authorized to use necessary force to maintain order. Repeat, this is not a test. Through her window, Maya watched fires bloom across the city's skyline like orange flowers against the night. The riots had started 6 hours ago when someone leaked fragments of the Webb data. Not the complete picture she'd been desperately trying to piece together, but enough twisted pieces to send the world spiraling into panic. A secure phone buzzed. Marcus's voice crackled through the encrypted channel, barely audible over what sounded like explosions in the background. "Maya, where the hell are you? The facility's been compromised. They've got Chen's team and they're coming for anyone connected to the project." "Who's they?" Maya whispered, though she suspected she already knew. "Government cleanup crew. Black Ops. Maybe something worse." His breathing was ragged. "Listen carefully. I managed to extract the final simulation data before they torched the servers. The universe isn't just smaller than we thought. It's contracting. Fast." Maya's blood turned to ice water. She'd suspected something like this from the quantum resonance patterns, but hearing it confirmed made her legs give out. She collapsed into her chair, staring at the equations she'd been working on for the past 18 hours. "How fast?" she managed. "At current rate, we've got maybe 36 hours before the boundaries start collapsing inward, but Maya, that's not the worst part." Static filled the line for a moment. "The walls, whatever's containing us, they're not passive, they're responding to our discovery, like an immune system activating." Outside, the emergency sirens had multiplied into a symphony of electronic wailing. Maya watched a military convoy tear down the street below, their headlights cutting through smoke that shouldn't exist in a normal October evening. Nothing about this was normal anymore. "The cellular automaton you've been tracking," Marcus continued, his voice fading in and out. "I think I know what it is. It's not just monitoring us, it's been guiding our technological development. Think about it. Every major breakthrough in physics, every leap in computational power, every space telescope we've built." The line went dead. Maya stared at her phone, then at the papers spread before her. The mathematical proof she'd been constructing suddenly shifted into horrible focus. The patterns weren't random. The quantum signatures she detected from the Webb telescope weren't just evidence of containment. They were evidence of cultivation. A laptop chimed with an incoming message from an address she didn't recognize. The sender was listed simply as observer. "Dr. Chen, you have approximately 34 hours and 17 minutes remaining before containment protocols activate. This is not a threat, it is a timer. You have impressed the architects with your deductive capabilities. A proposition awaits you at coordinates 40.7589 minus 73.9851. Come alone. Bring your research." Maya's hands shook as she cross-referenced the coordinates. The Chrysler Building. Of course. Right in the heart of Manhattan, where chaos would provide perfect cover for whatever this proposition entailed. She gathered her papers with mechanical precision, her mind racing through possibilities. The cellular automaton Marcus had mentioned. If it had been guiding human development, then their entire technological civilization was a puppet show. Every scientific discovery, every breakthrough that led them to build the James Webb telescope had been orchestrated to reach this exact moment. But why? What was the purpose of letting them discover their imprisonment? Her apartment building shuddered, and through the window she saw something that made her question her sanity. The stars were moving, not drifting or twinkling, actually sliding across the sky like points of light on a vast rotating sphere. The constellation Orion was noticeably closer to the Big Dipper than it had been an hour ago. The contraction had begun. Maya stuffed her research into her backpack and headed for the door, but stopped when she noticed something odd about her reflection in the hallway mirror. For just a moment, her image seemed to lag behind her movements, like a delayed video feed. She raised her hand, and her reflection followed a split second later. The realization hit her like a physical blow. They weren't just contained, they were simulated. The lag wasn't a glitch in the mirror, it was processing delay. She was watching her own code execute in real time. Somewhere in whatever vast computational matrix surrounded them, processors were working overtime to maintain the illusion of reality while the boundaries collapsed inward. Every breath she took, every heartbeat, every terrified thought was being calculated and rendered by something incomprehensibly large and intelligent. As she stepped into the hallway, Maya understood that the next 30 to 4 hours wouldn't just determine humanity's fate. They would determine whether humanity was real enough to have a fate at all. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime that sounded exactly like a computer notification. The quantum resonance chamber hummed with otherworldly energy as Maya's team worked frantically to calibrate the transmission array. Outside the facility, the world continued its descent into chaos. Riots in major cities, governments declaring martial law, religious movements proclaiming the end times. But here, in this sterile underground laboratory, humanity's last hope rested on mathematics and desperate ingenuity. "The frequency is stabilizing," Dr. Patel announced, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "But Maya, the power requirements are astronomical. We're pulling energy from 3 nuclear plants just to maintain coherence." Maya wiped sweat from her brow, her mind racing through calculations. The discovery that their universe existed within a cellular structure had shattered everything they thought they knew about reality. Now, with evidence mounting that they were essentially parasites within some incomprehensibly vast organism, they faced an impossible task, making contact with their host. "How long until the next neural pulse?" she asked, studying the temporal patterns they'd detected in the cosmic background radiation. These pulses, they'd determined, were thoughts, electrical impulses firing through neural pathways larger than galaxy clusters. 17 minutes, Dr. Rodriguez called out from across the room. "But Maya, there's something else. The pulse intensity is increasing. Whatever's thinking out there, it's becoming more active." Director Harrison burst through the security doors, his face pale with exhaustion. "The president is breathing down my neck. Beijing, Moscow, London, they're all demanding answers. How much longer do you need?" "We get one shot at this," Maya replied without looking up from her calculations. "The energy expenditure will overload every system we have. If we miss the neural pulse window, we won't get another chance." The implications weighed heavily on everyone present. Through the telescope data, they'd mapped the boundaries of their cosmic prison, a roughly spherical space containing what they'd always believed was the entire observable universe. Beyond those boundaries lay something else entirely: organic tissue, neural networks, and electromagnetic patterns that defied comprehension. "Contact established with the European array," Dr. Kim reported from her station. "They're ready to synchronize. The Chinese facility is still uncertain about cooperation." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 6 billion lives pressing down on her shoulders. The panic spreading across Earth wasn't just about existential crisis. It was about powerlessness. Humanity had always believed they were the masters of their destiny, explorers reaching toward infinite stars. Now they knew they were trapped, finite, possibly irrelevant. "Bring up the transmission protocol," she ordered. The challenge wasn't just technological, it was conceptual. How do you communicate with something so vast that your entire reality exists within a single cell? How do you make yourself heard across scales that dwarfed imagination? The answer had come through studying neural networks, both human and artificial. Consciousness, they'd realized, operated on patterns rather than size. A thought in the human brain involved billions of neurons, but the pattern itself was what mattered. They would attempt to create a pattern significant enough to register as conscious activity within their host's awareness. 10 minutes to neural pulse," Rodriguez announced. "All stations report ready." Maya's hands trembled as she input the final calculations. They'd encoded their message using mathematical constants: pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences, universal truths that should be recognizable to any intelligence. But wrapped within those patterns was something more, a desperate plea for recognition, for communication, for some acknowledgement that humanity existed and deserved to survive. "Dr. Chen," Harrison said quietly, moving to stand beside her. What if it doesn't care? What if we're so insignificant that our message never even registers?" Maya met his eyes, seeing her own fears reflected there. Then we learn we're not the center of the universe, but we also learn we're part of something incredible, something alive and thinking on scales we never imagined possible. 5 minutes to pulse, Patel called out. Power levels at maximum sustainable output, all global arrays synchronizing. The chamber fell silent, except for the hum of machinery and the quiet whisper of air circulation. Maya watched the countdown timer, her mind drifting to her daughter's drawing still folded in her pocket. Stick figures holding hands under a smiling sun. Such a simple representation of hope and connection. 2 minutes. Her fingers hovered over the transmission controls. Once activated, their message would propagate through quantum fields, riding the neural pulse like a signal through synapses. It would carry humanity's voice into the vast consciousness surrounding them. 30 seconds. Maya thought about all the telescopes that had peered into space, searching for signs of life among distant stars. The irony was almost overwhelming. They'd been living inside that life all along. Neural pulse detected. Transmission window opening in 10 seconds. Maya's finger found the activation key. Around the world, quantum arrays aligned their frequencies. Humanity prepared to announce itself to its host. Now, she whispered, and pressed the button. The facility's emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red as Maya's fingers flew across the keyboard. Around her, the quantum computer's cooling systems whined in protest, pushed far beyond their design limits. She had maybe 20 minutes before the entire system would shut down from overheating. "Talk to me, Maya." David's voice crackled through her earpiece. He was somewhere in the building's lower levels, trying to restore main power while Marcus held off the growing crowd of military personnel demanding entry. "I'm running the final simulation," Maya replied, watching streams of data cascade across multiple screens. "The resonance frequency should be—" She stopped, staring at the results. "David, this doesn't make sense." The mathematical model was complete, showing exactly how to generate the specific quantum vibration needed to breach their containment. But the energy requirements were staggering, equivalent to the output of a small star. Even if they could somehow harness every nuclear reactor on Earth simultaneously, it wouldn't be enough. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked from beside her, still monitoring global communications. The panic was spreading faster now, with 3 more governments declaring martial law in the past hour. The energy needed to break through. It's impossible with our current technology. Maya's heart sank as she double-checked the calculations. We'd need technology centuries beyond what we have. A new voice cut through their secure channel, Dr. Elizabeth Kane, the head of the European Space Agency. "Dr. Chen, this is Kane. I've been following your research through channels you don't need to know about. What if I told you the energy source already exists?" Maya froze. "What are you talking about?" "Operation Prometheus, classified beyond black. We've been working on controlled fusion reactions that could theoretically power interstellar travel. The prototype is hidden beneath CERN, and it's operational." Sarah's eyes widened. "They built a miniature star?" "Close enough." Kane's voice carried a mix of pride and fear. "But Maya, you need to understand, activating it is a one-way ticket. If your theory is wrong, if we're not actually contained, this much energy released at once could sterilize half of Europe." The weight of the choice pressed down on Maya like a physical force. She looked at the monitors showing riots in 12 major cities, at the data proving their universe was impossibly small, at the quantum signatures that could only mean one thing: they were trapped inside something vast and alien. "There's something else," she said slowly, a new realization forming. "The energy signature I've been tracking, it's not random. There's a pattern buried in the quantum fluctuations. It's almost like—" Her fingers moved across the keyboard, isolating specific frequencies and running them through pattern recognition software. The result made her blood run cold. "It's a heartbeat," she whispered. "What?" David's voice was sharp. "The quantum fluctuations, the energy signatures, they follow a biological rhythm. We're not just inside something artificial. We're inside something alive. The implications hit them all at once. Their entire universe, everyone they'd ever known or loved, existed within a living entity so vast that galaxies were merely cells in its body. Maya. Sarah's voice was barely audible. If we break out, what happens to us? To Earth? Before Maya could answer, Marcus's voice burst through their channel, militaries through the outer perimeter. You have maybe 5 minutes before they breach this level. Kane's voice returned. Dr. Chen, I need your decision. Prometheus can be activated remotely, but once we start the sequence, there's no stopping it. Do we try to break free? Maya stared at the data, her mind racing through possibilities. They could try to breach their containment, but success might mean their immediate destruction. They could let things continue as they were, but the spreading panic would tear civilization apart within days. Or, wait, she said, her mind seizing on a third option. What if we're thinking about this wrong? What if instead of breaking out, we try to communicate? With what? David asked. With our host. If this entity is truly alive, it might be unaware of our existence. We could use the same resonance frequency, but instead of trying to tear through the barrier, we modulate it. Create a pattern it might recognize as intentional. Sarah looked skeptical. You want to knock on the door instead of kicking it down? Exactly. Maya was already modifying the calculations. The energy requirements would be a fraction of what we need for an escape attempt. And if it works, if it doesn't, Kane interrupted, we're still trapped, and the panic continues. The sound of approaching boots echoed through the corridors above them. Maya looked at her team, at the data that had consumed her life for the past 3 days, at the screens showing a world tearing itself apart. Kane, begin the Prometheus initialization sequence, but hold at 90%. If communication fails, we go with the original plan. Understood. Beginning sequence now. Maya turned back to her keyboard, reconfiguring the quantum resonance pattern. Instead of a battering ram, they would create a symphony, a message that could cross the impossible gulf between their tiny universe and the incomprehensible intelligence that contained it. Time was running out, but for the first time in days, Maya felt something that wasn't quite hope, but wasn't despair either. It was possibility. The countdown timer on Maya's screen showed 18 minutes remaining when the first reports began flooding in. Emergency broadcasts crackled across every frequency as cities worldwide witnessed the impossible, sections of sky simply vanishing, revealing an endless metallic surface beyond. Maya, we're getting calls from observatories everywhere. Director Harrison's voice cut through the chaos in the control room. Tokyo, London, Sydney, they're all seeing it. The boundaries are becoming visible to the naked eye. Maya's fingers flew across the quantum interface, her mind racing as fast as the collapsing parameters around them. The entity's response to their communication attempt was more dramatic than she'd anticipated. By acknowledging their presence, it had triggered some kind of revelation protocol. It's showing us the truth, she whispered, watching the telemetry data stream past. The camouflage is failing because it knows we know. Through the facility's windows, she could see people gathering in the parking lot, pointing skyward with expressions of terror and wonder. Above them, a geometric seam stretched across what had once been seamless blue, like a crack in painted glass revealing the substrate beneath. Dr. Reeves appeared at her shoulder, his face pale. Social media is exploding. The president's been moved to a secure location. Maya, whatever you're going to do, I'm not stopping the revelation, she interrupted, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. I'm trying to control it. Look at the pattern. She gestured to her screen where the dimensional boundaries were mapped in real time. The areas of sky revealing the metallic surface weren't random. They formed a deliberate sequence, almost like visual punctuation marks in a vast sentence. It's trying to communicate, Maya realized. The entity isn't just acknowledging us. It's attempting to establish a proper dialogue. The revelation accelerated. Reports flooded in of aurora-like phenomena appearing in broad daylight as the barriers between their contained reality and whatever lay beyond grew increasingly thin. In major cities, electronic displays flickered and died, while others spontaneously activated to show the same repeating symbol, a complex geometric pattern that seemed to shift and evolve as people watched. "The infrastructure can't handle much more of this," Harrison warned. "Power grids are fluctuating, satellites are going dark. We're looking at complete societal breakdown within the hour." Maya closed her eyes, centering herself as she had during those long nights working on quantum consciousness theory. There had to be a way to stabilize the revelation, to ease humanity into this new reality instead of letting it shatter their world entirely. "The resonance frequencies," she murmured, opening her eyes with sudden clarity. "We can modulate them." Her hands moved with desperate precision, inputting commands into the quantum array. If she could match the entity's communication frequency and respond in kind, perhaps she could convince it to slow the process, give humanity time to adapt. "Maya, what are you doing?" Reeves demanded. "Asking for mercy," she replied, initiating the transmission sequence. The quantum array hummed to life, sending carefully modulated signals toward the points where reality had grown thin. Maya had encoded a simple message in mathematical principles that any sufficiently advanced intelligence should recognize, a plea for gradual revelation rather than sudden exposure. "It's listening," Maya breathed. The symbol on the world's displays shifted, becoming less chaotic and more structured. Maya recognized it now, not as writing or imagery, but as a kind of emotional mathematical concept. The entity was expressing something like curiosity, concern. The closest human approximation might be a parent realizing their child had developed enough to understand a difficult truth. "Dr. Chen," a technician called out, "we're receiving structured data transmission. It's teaching us something." Maya rushed to the communications station where streams of information were being received and automatically processed. The data was elegant in its simplicity, fundamental principles of physics and reality that explained not just their situation, but the nature of consciousness itself. "We're not prisoners," Maya realized, her voice filled with wonder. "We're children, developing minds being protected and nurtured until we're ready for the full reality." The implications hit her like a physical force. Humanity wasn't trapped or imprisoned. They were being raised, guided through evolutionary stages within a carefully maintained environment. The entity wasn't their captor but their guardian, and the boundaries of their reality weren't cage walls but nursery boundaries. "And now we've reached the stage where we're asking questions about what lies beyond," she whispered. The countdown timer reached 0, but instead of catastrophe, there was a profound sense of transition. The world hadn't ended, it had simply taken its first step into a larger universe. Through the transparent portions of sky, Maya could see vast structures and distant lights that spoke of civilizations and possibilities beyond current human comprehension. The real question now wasn't how to escape their cosmic nursery, but whether humanity was truly ready to leave it behind. The countdown timer on Maya's screen showed 47 minutes remaining when the walls began to shift. At first, she thought it was exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. The laboratory around her seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with an almost organic rhythm. Then Dr. Reeves stumbled backward from his workstation, pointing at the ceiling where geometric patterns were materializing, impossible fractals that hurt to look at directly. "It's responding," Maya whispered, her fingers still flying across the quantum transmitter's interface. The signal they'd been broadcasting into the substrate was working. Whatever vast intelligence contained their universe was acknowledging their presence. The air itself began to shimmer. Through the translucent distortions, Maya caught glimpses of something beyond, structures of crystalline light that stretched infinitely in directions that shouldn't exist. The boundary between their reality and the greater space outside was dissolving. "Maya!" "The readings," Reeves called out, his voice strained. "The fundamental constants are fluctuating. If this continues..." Atomic bombs could. A sound cut through his warning, not heard but felt, vibrating through every molecule of their being. It was communication, Maya realized, though unlike anything human ears were designed to process. Somehow, her mind began to pass meaning from the impossible frequencies. Offspring, awakening, assessment required. The laboratory faded around them, replaced by a space that defied description. Maya found herself standing on a platform of pure mathematics, surrounded by entities that existed as living equations. One of them approached, a consciousness so vast that her perception could only grasp fragments, spiraling galaxies that formed thoughts, stellar nurseries that served as memory banks, dark matter woven into neural networks spanning cosmic distances. Dr. Maya Chen, the entity communicated, and hearing her name in that alien context sent chills through her soul. "You have achieved recognition. Your species approaches maturation." "What are we?" Maya managed to ask, though she wasn't sure if she spoke aloud or simply thought the words into existence. "What is this place?" The answer came not in words but in direct knowledge, flooding her consciousness with revelations that rewrote everything she thought she knew about existence. Their universe, what humanity considered reality, was indeed contained within something greater. But not as prisoners or lab specimens. They were offspring, developing within a cosmic nursery designed to nurture emerging intelligence. Every galaxy, every star, every planet had been carefully calibrated to produce the exact conditions necessary for consciousness to evolve. The entity showed her the truth. Countless other universes, each containing civilizations at different stages of development. Some had already graduated beyond their nurturing boundaries, becoming cosmic intelligences themselves. Others remained in earlier phases, their inhabitants still believing they lived in isolated, natural universes. "The barriers," Maya said, understanding flooding through her. "The size limitations we discovered, they're not walls, they're protective boundaries?" "Correct. Until a species demonstrates sufficient understanding to breach the substrate itself, they remain safely contained. Your achievement indicates readiness for evaluation." But there was more. The entity revealed the choice. Now facing humanity, they could remain in their familiar universe, continuing to develop at their own pace with the protective barriers intact. Or they could graduate into the greater reality, joining the community of cosmic intelligences but leaving behind everything they had ever known. Maya felt the weight of the decision crushing down on her. Back in their universe, the timer was still counting down. The world's governments were preparing for war, religions were splintering, and civilization teetered on the brink of collapse. The truth she had uncovered, this revelation about humanity's true nature, could either save them or destroy them completely. "How long do we have to decide?" she asked. "The choice must be made by your species collectively. We will provide the knowledge. How you use it determines your path forward." The cosmic nursery began to fade, and Maya found herself back in the laboratory. But everything had changed. The quantum transmitter now hummed with new purpose, no longer broadcasting into the substrate but downloading incomprehensible amounts of information. Knowledge that would take humanity generations to fully understand. Blueprints for technologies beyond imagination, philosophical frameworks for comprehending cosmic consciousness, and the coordinates for other graduating civilizations. Dr. Reeves stared at her, his eyes wide with wonder and terror. "Maya, what did you see?" The instruments recorded impossible readings, and then she looked at the screens around them, now displaying data that made their previous discoveries seem like children's drawings. The timer had stopped. Not because time had run out, but because time itself had become negotiable. "We have a choice to make," Maya said quietly, her mind still reeling from the contact. "All of us. Every human being alive." Outside, the first news broadcasts were beginning to report strange phenomena worldwide. Geometric patterns appearing in the sky, gravity fluctuations in major cities, and radio telescopes picking up signals that seemed to originate from everywhere at once. The cosmic intelligence was making its presence known to everyone, not just the scientific community. The nurturing period was ending. Humanity's graduation day had arrived. Maya reached for her phone, knowing she had to make the most important call in human history.